Hello, everyone. Welcome to Bible Talk with Felicia. Today we will be going over Genesis chapter 15. This chapter focuses on God covenant with Abram. In Genesis chapter 15, verse 1, because I'm going to break it down. In verse 1, the word of the Lord came to Abram in a vision, saying, "Fear not, Abram. I am your shield and your exceedingly great reward." In this verse, God wanted Abram to know he has, and will always will be his protector and provider. God comforted Abram with a vision. Now remember, in Genesis chapter 14, Abram had just defeated an army that was much larger than his. So maybe he was afraid and he also rejected himself a great reward offered from the king. So at this moment, you have to think about how Abram felt. Going back reading Genesis chapter 14. There was some fear there. There was some concerns that Abram had. In verse 2 through 3, at this moment, Abram expressed his doubt to the Lord, stating he had no children, no heir, and he also mentioned his servant Eliezer, because according to the custom, if Abram were to die without a son, his eldest servant would become his heir. So there was a lot of doubt, okay, a lot of concern because, at this time, remember, when God called Abram was like 75 years old. So, now, he's kind of up there in age and he's like, hey, God, where is my heir? I don't have a son and I don't want to leave my inheritance to my servant. So in verse 4 and 5, God comforted Abram doubt with a promise of descendants too numerous to imagine. Now let me read verse 5. And I'm reading from the Jeremiah Study Bible. So it's not going to sound too much like the King James. So in verse 5, he says this. Then he brought him outside and said, "Look now towards heaven and count the stars, if you are able to number them." And he said to him, "So shall your descendants be numbered." See, God is trying to explain to Abram, look, I'm going to keep my promise. Go outside, look up to heaven. If you can number the stars and you can number, what did he say? Yes. He said, look now towards heaven and count the stars if you are able to number them. And he said to him, so shall your descendants be. You can number the stars, you can number your descendants. And that's what he's telling Abram. Sometimes we need comfort. Sometimes we need confirmation, assurance, and God is comforting Abram. He's letting him know, I'm going to keep my promise. In verse 6, it was Abram's belief in the Lord, not his action, that made Abram right with God. Okay, because in verse 6 it says, and he believed in the Lord, and he accounted it to him for righteousness. So it was Abram's belief. Verse 7 and 8, God speaks to Abram about where he brought him out of. But in verse 8, Abram doubts resurface again, saying, let me read verse 8. It says, and he said, Lord God, how shall I know that I will inherit it? Abram was looking for a sign that he was doing God's will. And that's really all of us. Sometimes, we feel like Abram, God, how shall we know? How shall I know? Now in verse 9, God told Abram, well, verses 9 through 11, God told Abram to bring three animals, each 3 years old, and two birds. See, this is now when the when the covenant is starting to happen. God is like, okay, you know what, you know, let's seal this. You know, let's get down to entering into covenant. So God tells Abram to bring him three animals, each 3 years old, and two birds. Abram cut them up and arranged them in pairs, one bird on a side, one bird on each side. And then Abram and God enter into covenant. So in verse 9 through 11, this is where God and Abram is entering into a covenant. Verses 12 through 16, God caused a deep sleep to fall upon Abram. And the Lord tells Abram of the slavery and the hardship Israel will endure in Egypt. Yet they would, after 4 generations, come back into the promised land. Now, I want to stop here and read. Let me see. Let me read verse. I'm going to read verse 13 through through 15. It says, then he said to Abram, know certainly that your descendants will be stronger in a land, will be strangers in a land that is not theirs, and will serve them, and they will afflict them for 400 years. Let me tell you something. God gave Abram the sign and the assurance that he needed. He put this man in a deep sleep, caused a deep sleep to come upon him, and said, okay, if you want a sign, you want answers, I'm going to give it to you. He gave this man a 400-year sign saying your people is going to be enslaved. They are going to experience hardship for 400 years. That's a long time. Be careful what you ask the Lord, because he may just give it to you. And that's what he did. He gave it to Abram and let him know that your people are going to be afflicted for 400 years. And now in verse 14, he says, and also the nation whom they serve I will judge. Afterwards they shall come out with great possession. So God is letting Abram know here, okay, look, they're going to go through it. But guess what? Okay, I'm going to judge them. But also when they come out, they're not going to come out empty-handed. You see, when God brings you out of a situation, trust me, you're not going to come out empty-handed, especially when God's hand is on it. So they came up with great possession. In verse 15, he said, now as for you, not only did he give him information about his descendants, but he also gave him information about himself. So God even took it a step further. And he said, now as for you, you shall go to your fathers in peace. You shall be buried at a good old age. God even told him pretty much, this is how you're going to die. Okay. God said, now as for you, you shall go to your fathers in peace. You shall be buried at a good old age. God let him know, look, don't stress, don't worry. I'm going to take care of you. Now, verse 17 through 18, the covenant is made. Pretty much it's made. 17 through 21. The covenant is made. God passes through the pieces, which was it was pretty much like a visual assurance to Abram that the covenant God has made was real. And in verse 19 through 21, God tells him, to your descendants I have given this land, from the rivers of Egypt to the great river. See, God is in 19 through 21, I'm sorry, through 18 through 21, God is speaking to Abram and letting him know, look, this land that I promised you right here, your descendants is going to get. He's letting him know. Don't worry, don't stress. And Abram really had to have a belief system here. He really had to walk by faith because he don't have an heir. He don't have a son. So all this God is telling him, he have to believe in it. He have to in order for it to come to pass. I know it is hard to believe in something that you have not seen. But see, this is, we serve a mighty God. And God wants us to know that there are things that you will get. Okay, there are things that he has stored up for you. There are things that God has for you. You may not have seen it yet, but you have it. You just have to keep walking with him, walking in faith, believing in it. This is the end of Genesis chapter 15. The one thing I did want you to get out of Genesis chapter 15 is that, Abram had an intimate relationship with the Lord. And we all must have that. We all must have that intimate relationship with the Lord. I wanna share this. I was reading this out of a study Bible. And it says this. Hold on, let me see if I can find it here. Here it goes. It says, although Abram has been demonstrating his faith through his action, it was his belief in the Lord, not his action, that made Abram right with God. We too can have a right relationship with God by trusting him. Our outward action, church attendance, prayer, good deeds will not by themselves make us right with God. A right relationship is based on faith. The heartfelt inner confidence that God is who he says he is and does what he says he will do. Right actions will follow naturally as a byproduct. Abram his faith walk with the Lord was exceedingly great. I mean, think about it. He called you out of your father's land at an older age and telling you, look, go here, go there, believe in me. I mean, God is making promises to him. They enter into covenant. And Abram really wants a son. He wants an heir. But in order for Abram to get what he is asking for, he must establish an intimate relationship with the Lord. A lot of times we think, us going to church, us praying, and us doing good deed is enough. That's it. No, you have to do more than that. You have to have a relationship with God. And it has to be intimate. So when you get a chance, read over chapter 15, Genesis chapter 15, and think about your relationship with the Lord. Is it intimate? Do you talk to the Lord on a daily basis? Do you hear him? Think about it. Abram and God had a serious personal relationship. It was so personal that, God was giving this man visions and coming to him in a dream. Some people that claim that they are believers cannot say that at all. So I would strongly advise reading Genesis chapter 15 and look at your relationship that you have with God. Really look at it. Because what God told Abram was serious. Not only did he give him information for 400, told him for 400 years, your people are going to be enslaved. Sometimes people be like, oh God, can you let me know how, 2017 gonna be, 2018 gonna be, y'all be asking God for 1 or 2 years. No, God gave Abram the 400 years, 4 generations, and then told him how he was gonna die in peace, So, yeah, when you get a chance, just read Genesis 15. Take a look at your relationship with God. And if I left something out concerning Genesis chapter 15, leave it in the comment box below. I mean, we can feel free to talk about a dialogue. Maybe I did leave some things out. But your relationship with the Lord is more important than anything. Until then, talk to you later.